There are plenty of transfer rumours going around. There's rumours about players coming back from injury sooner than expected, and there are also plenty of contract renewals to discuss, as well as the preview of the Crystal Palace game this evening. This is the Arsenal Roundup episode 14 from Arsenal Unfiltered. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Arsenal Unfiltered, your 3 times a week dose of Arsenal coverage. With me, your host Mark. This is episode 14 of the Arsenal Roundup, and I'm going to combine two things into one today. I'm going to preview the Crystal Palace match first, but then I'm also going to do some news that we've missed over recent weeks. It's been non-stop with match previews, match reviews, so I just wanted to cover off a couple of the stories that I've missed. So that's why it is an episode of the Arsenal Roundup, but centering around that Crystal Palace game. Wherever you are, I really hope you are well and you're ready for a evening of Arsenal entertainment once more. It's 8 o'clock tonight. I think it's 8 o'clock tonight. I've presumed it's 8 o'clock tonight that we play Crystal Palace. I do know that it is at the Emirates and there are tickets available. Tickets are available on the ticket exchange, of course, according to the Arsenal website. Bit gutted I cannot be there this evening. If I could travel down, I probably would, but I am in the ballot for that incredibly exciting PSG home leg. I believe that ballot closes this morning, so if you catch this very early on your Wednesday morning, go and enter that ballot if you can, if you have a membership, and make sure that we have, we will obviously have a full stadium for that game, no questions asked, but make sure we have the very best support we can have. So, Crystal Palace this evening, let's start there before we move on to the news. And I think the most interesting bit of this game tonight is going to be the team selection. How is Mikel Arteta going to handle this? And he was asked about this in his pre-match press conference. And speaking about the gap that we have between the PSG game and this Palace game, we have about 6 days. PSG do need to play on the weekend. However, they have already won the league and they are continuing to run away with it. So whilst they have to play, they can probably rotate pretty heavily. I would be amazed if you saw players like Dembele and Kvaratskhelia playing in that game on the weekend. But, it's still a stress on them that we don't have. They still have to travel. The manager has to travel. Some of the players will have to travel. It's a slight advantage to us, especially going into a home leg. So that's positive. For Mikel Arteta, whether the gap that we have will have any bearing on the team selection tonight, he says, yeah, it will. We have more days. The amount of options that we have is not that many. And I think he's referring to the fact that we still have a lot of injuries in the squad, especially because of where some of the players are coming and the amount of minutes that they can play. But it's good to have a little gap because we are really short in numbers. So Mikel Arteta is clearly grateful of that very slight advantage we're going to have over PSG. For me, this centres around one big question. Will Thomas Partey start this evening or will he be left out again? Because he is suspended for that first leg against PSG, as a ridiculous yellow card he picked up against Real Madrid, and I really hope we don't live to regret that. And I think like I mentioned in the Ipswich pod, we've probably seen the preview, the template for the PSG game, especially in that midfield, Rice at the base, Mikel Merino left 8, Martin Odegaard in his usual position at right 8. So, will Thomas Partey start? I mean, it makes a lot of sense to me to start Thomas Partey because we don't need him. Well, we can't use him in that PSG game. So putting someone on the bench and giving them a rest to allow them to be slightly fresher for that game would be very, very beneficial. Equally, it would allow more rotation, off the substitute bench. If you started Thomas Partey, for example, and left Mikel Merino on the bench, you could give Partey a 90 and swap Merino and Rice at kind of 55, 60 minutes. And make sure that everyone has a little, a few touches of the ball, stays sharp, but also doesn't overstretch themselves. Apparently, according to Mikel Arteta, Thomas Partey was not well enough to start the Ipswich game. Maybe a little bit of a sickness, maybe, I don't know, picked up on the plane or something. That can happen. I think I'm not sure I believe him there. I do think he was probably looking to find his template for the PSG game. I think he found it in that Ipswich match. For me, I think you have to start Thomas Partey. Let's give Declan Rice a break, okay? He played a really massive role in the Real Madrid game. dealing with transitions, dealing with those moments that Real Madrid could have made really, really difficult for us. And I promise you, PSG are going to do the same. They have similar levels of pace in their front three. Maybe not as lethal, maybe not as established as the Real Madrid front three, but they are still really, really dangerous. And Dembele, particularly, is having the season of his life, scoring plenty of goals. For me, however, the real threat is Kvaratskhelia. He is incredible. I've watched him since he's moved to PSG in January, I should say, a couple of times. Watched him against Liverpool, watched him a little bit against Villa. He blows my mind at how good he is. He really is an impressive talent, and a little bit gutted he's not at Arsenal, to be honest. A little bit gutted. 70 million quid, I definitely would have done that deal. But Declan Rice deals with players like that really, really well. So I would start Thomas Partey. I would give Declan Rice a break, and I would go with a midfield of Partey, Marino, Ødegaard, and probably swap in someone like, well, probably Rice, at kind of maybe half-time, 55 minutes. So that would be how I would do it. Make sure Declan Rice is prioritised for a rest, because I don't think he's going to go. I don't think he will lose his sharpness. I think maybe you need to keep giving Martin Ødegaard minutes, keep him on topped up. Mikel Merino hasn't played as many games as Rice has this year, so I think he is a logical player to start and play 90 minutes probably in this game as well. So let's rest up Declan Rice and maybe give him half an hour towards the end. Of course, another big question is, what do you do at fullback? Jurrien Timber completely sat out the Ipswich game. Do you bring him back in to keep him sharp, or do you keep faith or keep storing Ben White on the right back slot to keep Jurrien Timber fresh for, like I say, a really difficult battle against either Kvaratskhelia or Desiree Doué on that right hand side for us? That's a really interesting one. I think left hand side, I would bring Miles Lewis-Skelly back in. And maybe do the reverse of what he did in the previous game, in the Ipswich game, where Zinchenko started and Lewis-Skelly came on. I'd probably do the reverse of that. Lewis-Skelly starts, Zinchenko comes on around 60 minutes to relieve him and keep him fresh enough. At right back, I think it's a more delicate balance. I'm not quite certain. I think I'd probably do Ben White and then Timber at 60 minutes, because Timber is going to have to be so fresh. He is going to be playing that Champions League game. He is going to be the guy at right back. So that's probably what I'd do there. And then obviously Bukayo Saka is a big one. Now, Mikel Arteta was asked about Bukayo Saka, and he gave a very, very Mikel Arteta response. We will have to wait and see how he reacts after the session, but it's nothing too serious. I mean, that we've seen that multiple times for so many comments on injury from Mikel Arteta, and he did follow that up with, he does have a good chance to play on Wednesday against Palace. And I think for me, I think I would play him. I would start him. I would do very similar to the Ipswich game. Bring Ranieri on at sort of early second half again. And yeah, I think he needs the sharpness. We saw in the Ipswich game his kind of threat levels continue to increase. He continues to show his level. But there's also that last moment I think he could do with scoring a few more goals, getting a bit more confidence in front of goal. He had two really good chances against Ipswich. The second one, I think he should score, but obviously he's just been kicked to the nines by Leif Davis just before that. So, look, I think Saka will start, and I think we are hopefully going to see him come on, gain more sharpness, and get a rest. So I would go David Raya, Jurrien Timber at right back, Saliba and Kivior, I think, are the only choices really at centre back. Lewis-Skelly at left back with a midfield of Partey, Ødegaard, Marino, and up front I would go basically the same three that started Ipswich: Saka, Trossard, and Martinelli. Very similar system, just rotated a little bit and see what we can do from there. But what about Crystal Palace? Well, they're 12th. They have nothing to play for in the Premier League. We probably have a little bit more to play for. We really need to wrap up second and get that done quickly. Forest obviously beat Tottenham the other night, and City beat Villa last night. So there are closing gaps maybe, but we still have a game in hand on Manchester City, and we will be, if we win this game and Forest win their next game, we will be 6 points clear of them with 12 left to play for. So, you know, we have a game against Bournemouth that we would need to, I think, win to take the pressure off those Liverpool and Newcastle games that are coming up afterwards. So I really do think we have a little bit more to play for than Palace, and we need to go out and win this game. As much as we have a Champions League semi-final on the horizon, they have another semi-final themselves. They are in the FA Cup semi this weekend against Aston Villa. So will they rotate? We don't know. Will we see Mateta come out? Will we see Sarr come out? Eze come out? Munoz come out? Some of those guys are their very, very best players. The cream of the crop, especially Eberechi Eze. What a player he is. He's scored some really good goals this year. Probably hasn't had as prolific a season as Palace maybe needed him to push them into the top half of the table. But I think he's done well. They play a 3-4-2-1, 3-4-3 kind of system with the likes of Mateta, Eze and Sarr up front. I think it's unlikely we'll see Eddie Nketiah. It feels like they've really settled into a rhythm with Mateta up top now that he's back from that horrible injury against Millwall. And I think when they're defending, they will drop into that 5-4-1, especially against us. A lot of teams struggle to play how they want to play against us, and I feel like those wide areas, I think it's Mitchell and Munoz who tend to play in those spots. I feel like those wide areas will be sucked in quite deep to deal with Gabriel Martinelli and Bukayo Saka. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I really do rate Palace. They're a strange team, right, in the sense that they always seem to finish like 11th, 12th. But they have some great results throughout the season. They always manage it. And actually, up until recently, they were on a very good run of form, I thought. Now, they've not won in their last 3, including 2 defeats, conceding 10 goals in that time. I mean, that's not ideal for them. Sorry, I'm just pulling up their recent results. However, before that, they were on a great run where they'd beaten Brighton in that kind of crazy, I think there was 3 red cards in that game. They'd beaten Fulham, they'd beaten Ipswich. So there'd been a really good run from them, and I think they'd gone sort of 6 or 7 games without losing. So very impressive, and obviously they are doing really, really well in the FA Cup. However, they've just had periods where they've been completely cold this year as well, and to concede 5 goals against Manchester City, 5 goals against Newcastle, and then they had a man sent off, of course, against Bournemouth. That ended up not being a bad result, them snatching a draw there at home. But, they don't look high on confidence. Only scored twice in the last 3 games. So this is a game that we should be winning. We should be getting through, but let's not underestimate them. Oliver Glasner is a very, very smart, intelligent coach and will be able to really, I think, give Mikel Arteta a bit of a run for his money. It's whether he has the power on the pitch, the players on the pitch, to prevent us winning. Really, I think the players to watch are, like I mentioned before, Eberechi Eze, an absolutely fantastic player, and Daniel Munoz, who is their right wing back, who is getting really, really high acclaim at the moment for his running, his capability going forward. He's had a really, really good output this year in terms of goals and assists, and has looked really, really dangerous and lively. So it'll be interesting to see how will Martinelli play that one. Will he try and pin him back? Will he cheat and stay high? Or will he fall back in, fulfill his defensive role, and then try and spring from there with Munoz kind of gathering ground and moving forward? Will he try and exploit that space in behind? That will be one to watch. Predictions? I am going to go 2-0 to Arsenal. I think we will get ahead and then kind of shut up shop. I don't think Arteta will want to waste any energy ahead of the PSG game. I can see a Saka goal going in. And you know what? I'm going to back Martinelli to continue with his fantastic goal-scoring form as well. Saka and Martinelli to score 2-0. I think we'll have both goals before 60 minutes, and then we will start tightening up, wrapping everything up, putting people into cotton wool and preparing them for PSG. Okay, I'm going to take a quick short break, and when I come back, I'm going to do the news that I've missed over the recent weeks. Hello everyone, thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you're like me, you finished watching an Arsenal game and you're already looking for the next bit of Arsenal coverage you can find. If that sounds like you, follow or subscribe to Arsenal Unfiltered on your podcast app of choice right now to make sure you don't miss a single episode from me. I'm here 3 times a week, reviewing matches and covering Arsenal news, and I'm so excited to have you all here as well. Thank you very much. Hello and welcome back to episode 14 of the Arsenal Roundup. In the first half, you've heard the Crystal Palace preview. Now we're going to wrap up with a couple of bits of news that I've missed over recent weeks as we've had such a busy schedule. I'm going to start in the contract renewal space because there's been a lot of really interesting stories going on there. First of all, Thomas Partey. Thomas Partey, who is out of contract this summer, who we all thought, you know what, he's going, and obviously played so brilliantly against Real Madrid, especially in that first leg. I thought he was absolutely fantastic in that game. Controlled the tempo, controlled the ball. I think in the first half, in that first leg, he didn't misplace a pass. What a fantastic advert for his game. I think we all thought, well, he's having a good season, but he's not been able to stay fit in any of the previous seasons. This is probably time to part ways and let him go and get his move to Spain. That's kind of shifted in recent weeks. I mean, Charles Watts on his podcast, Inside Arsenal, make sure you go and follow that because it's a really good daily show from Charles Watts. He was reporting Arsenal have not officially offered a contract. However, there are discussions going on in the background, and this might be something that they want to pursue. Arteta was asked about it, and he said, I leave that up to Andrea, but there's progress with all the players. I think at Arsenal, they are running a model where they're kind of always talking to people, always exploring what the options are. And I think maybe there is an option for Thomas Partey. Again, Charles Watts, Inside Arsenal, reporting that Partey loves London. And that's great. If he does love London, that's fantastic. There are obviously off-the-pitch rumours going on, which I thought would affect the club's reasoning for maybe letting him go. And we still really don't know too much about that or what's going on there. However, Thomas Partey has had a very good season on the pitch. On the pitch, he's been very, very professional, very good. And if the club are looking to offer him a new contract, I'm sure that they are happy with how he's performed this year and feel confident in his fitness to maybe give him a 1+1 or a 2-year contract, something like that, to keep him at the club and maybe solve a little bit of that problem that we've got developing in defensive midfield. Zubimendi really heavily linked to Arsenal. It looks like that will happen for £51 million in the window, the summer window. But Jorginho is definitely going. If Partey and Jorginho go, can we live with just Zubimendi at 6, or will Rice do more in the 6 role? Next season, who knows? But at the moment, I think the chances of Thomas Partey staying at Arsenal have heavily increased thanks to his fitness, his reliability, and his ability to play in big games like that Real Madrid game and perform at really good levels and show a turn of pace recently. He's done that a couple of times, just stretched himself when he's been playing at right back or covering for Jurrien Timber and Ben White marauding forward. Just showing a little bit of pace, a little bit of recovery speed, which has been really interesting to see. So he might have earned himself a new contract. 2 players who have definitely earned themselves a new contract. And I'm expecting announcements, hopefully before the end of the season. But if not before the end of the season, I'm sure it'll be almost immediately before the players go away for their summer holidays. Is Miles Lewis-Skelly and Ethan Nwaneri. Those two have come in and contributed humongous amounts to the first team this year. Obviously, Miles Lewis-Skelly has kind of made the left-back spot his own, and with Ricardo Calafiori out at the moment, that shirt really is his. And Ethan Nwaneri has been in and out of the team, but has 9 goals in all competitions this year, which is just a fantastic return from a teenager. A teenager has scored 9 goals. I think he's got 2 assists as well. So a really fantastic season for both of those guys. Miles Lewis-Skelly turning up to the Bernabeu and locking up or being part of the defence that locked up one of the best attacks in Europe. That's plenty for a new contract, if you ask me. So I expect both of those guys to sign. And of course, they will receive humongous wage increases. They're still kids, so I can't imagine that the packets will be massive, probably sub 50k a week, which, of course, to any normal person, that is massive. But in a Premier League team, that's one of the more modest contracts. And I think that's almost a barn door one. And Bukayo Saka is the other one who is currently rumoured to be really progressing his contract. The one that I am worried about, and we're not hearing too much about, is William Saliba. I would really love someone, like James McNicholas or Charles Watts to come out, maybe David Ornstein as well, drop an Orn bomb on us and just say those Saliba talks are progressing. I don't expect them to have the contract wrapped up. It's going to be a very complicated contract. It's going to be very difficult to do, and I'm sure it will be related to Gabriel's contract as well. So I reckon that's probably delaying the process for those guys. I think Saka sits on a plinth of his own. The 2 teenagers are fairly simple. Partey will be complicated, but for different reasons. The Saliba and Gabriel ones are the really, really tricky ones. Matching them up, giving them what they need. The best centre-back pairing in Europe. How do you balance their budgets? How do you balance their salaries? Very, very difficult. I just want someone to come out, a trusted source to come out and say, it's progressing. They're doing a good job. and Saliba is going to stay. He has obviously come out in a press conference and say he wants to win trophies here, and didn't give any indication that he was unhappy or anything like that. It was very positive noises from him, but I just want to hear something from the club. Other news, injury returns. Kai Havertz might be back before the end of the season. It's a big might. Mikel Arteta suggested that it's probably going to be way too soon for the semi-finals against PSG. But the last couple of games of the year, I mean, we've got Newcastle, and then I think it's Southampton, final game away from home. So, look, it's not implausible right now, and that really, really excites me. When I first saw that he was going under the knife, I was like, I'm a bit worried for pre-season in the summer. The fact that he might be back this season, and maybe, touch wood, if we get there, might be on the bench maybe for the Champions League final, who knows? That's really encouraging for me, because what that says to me is he will have a good summer. He will have time to get strong, get fit, and be ready for next season. And who knows, if he can do 10 minutes at the end of a Champions League semi-final, touch wood, we've still got to get there. I'm not jumping ahead, but if he can do 10 minutes and score the winning goal, his Arsenal career will forever be enshrined in our memories, in our hearts, no matter what happens going forward from there. He has history scoring winning goals in the Champions League. Remember that. Let's hope he is back. And of course, we have Andrea Berta in now. I did cover that at the time. It's just little rumours really going around. Apparently, he has been really speaking a lot to Nicholas Williams and Victor Gyökeres. Gyökeres is someone who had kind of fallen off the Arsenal striker search. We were really talking to Isak. We were talking about Sesko. We were talking about Ekitike. Lots of those names were going around. Gyökeres hadn't been in for maybe kind of 6 months into that kind of realm and that discussion, but he is back on the agenda. Whether you think Gyökeres is the right striker for us is a completely different topic. I think what we are seeing here is Andrea Berta start to exercise his influence across Europe, maybe make contact with his contacts, kind of start discussing players that he likes, and trying to figure out whether deals are possible. I really don't think Alexander Isak is possible from a financial point of view. And let's have a quick look at where Newcastle are. I think they probably will get Champions League, even though they just lost to Aston Villa. I just can't quite see Nottingham Forest going the distance. I think Villa are out of it now, and Chelsea just don't feel good enough to me in any way, shape or form. So I do think Newcastle will unfortunately get Champions League, and that would make the Alexander Isak deal so difficult. Of course, Newcastle play Chelsea at home, so they could almost rubber stamp it for themselves there. We might be able to affect that on the 18th of May when we take them on at the Emirates. So that would be, that feels like the Alexander Isak derby there right now, actually. If we can beat them there and put a real dent in their Champions League hopes, that could be massive if we go and get him. But I do think Gyökeres and a Williams is probably more likely than an Isak signing. That's really all the news that's happening outside of the matches and the game, so I'm going to kind of bring this to a close. Let's hope for a really, really good result against Crystal Palace tonight. Like I say, I'm predicting 2-0. Saka and Martinelli to score. I think Palace will rotate a little bit for their FA Cup semi-final. I think we will do similar, but not too much with the gap that we've got. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Like I said, if you listen to this before 10 a.m. on Wednesday, make sure you go and put your name in the hat for the ballot for the PSG game, and let's get a really, really good level of support at that match. All that's left to say is thank you for following, thank you for listening, and I'll speak to you very, very soon.